Hello, I'm Ronnie Eldridge. Welcome to Eldridge and Company. CUNY graduate Haile Rivera does what his mother told him to do. Pays attention to his community, helps those who need help, and he's politically active. Out of all of this, he ends up here. So welcome.
Thank you for having me.
Good. You are really very current with the times. I mean, a grassroots person who works in the community and who's in politics, right?
Yes,
and I see that you've got an Obama button on, so that was part of the whole thing. But were you you've been interested in politics for a long time.
I have.
Yeah.
I pretty much grew up in it. My mom was always active in politics. To this day, she's still involved.
Oh, yeah?
So I kind of picked that up, you know, very young. I'd probably say 8, 9 years old. I was active with my mom in the campaign trail, you know, just a kid tagging along with mom. Yeah. And here I am today.
What campaigns do you remember?
One of the campaigns was in Massachusetts, working for a mayor who was a good friend of the family, actually. His name's Jim Rurek, and he went on to become mayor for 8 years. And we moved on to another state, but that was the first experience we had.
Yeah, my kids always trailed with me, although none of them are really running for office, much to my disappointment. I have one who may be. So did you start with politics before you started with Obama? Were you involved in, you come from the Bronx, were you involved in Bronx politics?
I was. I'm still very active, very outspoken on the issues. I mean, I don't know anything to anybody except my mom and God, and not to Barack Obama. But, you know, I was always active, and when I saw an issue something going on in the community where I think nobody was stepping up to the plate, I would not hesitate to
So how do you get active in the Bronx? Do they have political clubs the way we have in Manhattan?
They do. They do.
And do they have meetings?
I think they do.
You didn't choose that route.
No, I did not choose that. I think that's pretty much established, what I call the establishment. I'm more in the grassroots level of going out to community boards. I'm very active there. That's where you hear the locals, the real local folks, expressing their issues and concerns. And, you know, how you get involved will depend on you. But it all started there. And to this day, I find myself going to the community boards.
So what did you do? How did you consolidate your position so that people listen to you? I mean, how did you get to be influential? I
think that, I mean, I was just very active, and then I started considering running for office in the city council in the Northwest Bronx, and the media started picking up, and then my dinner with now the president pretty much gave me more standing in the community, and obviously the media paid more attention to what I had to say then and to this day as well.
And well, so we have to go back to the lunch or the dinner or whatever it was with the president now. It's interesting to call him the president.
Yes.
But you formed an organization or something up in the Bronx. So,
I did.
I mean, if you have people, you learned that lesson. If you have people behind you, right, it strengthens your positions. Yeah,
and that's my number one of support, where I call the folks up and say, you know, and these are people that we've helped with numerous issues, from anything from immigration to becoming citizens to learning English, learning computers. We do the toy drive, turkeys, coats. So we're very, very grassroots, and we do this just because of you know. And
what's it called? Hands on New York. And does it have a website?
It's handsonnewyork.net.
Good. All right. So when did you start that, and how did that happen?
We started that in 2002. And when I say we, it was me, a college classmate, and a college professor. And we were very active. We're like family, really. And we wanted to get involved in the community, and that was back in the summer of '02. But we didn't find something that we didn't want to be, you know, we wanted to be on our own time, help out whenever we want to, whenever we can. And we decided to create our own nonprofit. It took us a couple months. We found a law firm that helped us do the paperwork for free. So now we're 6 years into it, going on 7, and we're having fun with it.
Great. And so those are your people?
And those are my people.
So then when there's an issue, explain what kind of an issue.
Well, I mean, for example, when we talk about schools overcrowding in our community, and that's probably, you know, across the country, but we see that more at the local level. And a lot of people talk about it, politicians talk about it all the time, but there's always nothing happening. I mean, it's just talks. What we do, we organize the parents, and we bring them to the schools and do rallies and get them to go to the community boards, get letters of support from the community boards, as well as pressure elected officials. At the end of the day, how we see it is the elected officials concerning about his or her vote on election day, and we always find a way to pressure it around there.
How did you get to know this? Is this what your mother did?
I kind of picked it up from her.
Yeah? Where was she born?
She was born in the Dominican Republic, as myself.
And you were, too?
Yes.
And how did she get involved? Do you know how she got involved?
No, I mean, she was active with the church. I remember that. And then that's where she met the mayor, former mayor, at the church, and they became good friends and family. So because of that activism in the church, she took it out, you know, to the streets. And you know.
Yeah. And in New York, you know, the clergy in many districts are very well organized. So
Yes, they are.
and they're organized sort of along Saul Alinsky lines, right? And that's sort of what you're talking about.
Yeah, yeah.
Yep. Do you tell everybody what to do?
No, I mean, I'm more of a person that I like to talk about the issue, explain both sides. I mean, there's always both sides to the coin, and let the people get involved in, you know, how do you want to go about this? This is what I think. But at the end, you know, I can't be dictating what to do. Yeah. I think we got to let the community get involved and what is best for them.
So this was a natural bonding with the Obama campaign.
I would say so, yeah. It was pretty...
When did you decide you were going to support him?
I actually, what a lot of people don't know is that I'm a political junkie, obviously, and I remember watching C-SPAN all the time. And I remember watching Barack Obama running for U.S. Senate in Chicago and Illinois, and I just saw something about him that kind of like triggered, you know, some interest on my part. And I remember looking him up and reading about him, and it's just, I kept watching the videos on C-SPAN on how the people, because he's a black candidate running, you know, in Illinois, he would become the first black senator, U.S. senator. It just caught my attention, and the way they interacted with him, something triggered me to actually send him a donation.
Oh boy!
With a letter, a small donation, because with a nice little note, and you know, at the time people thought I was crazy because this guy's not going to respond to you. Well, he did actually, and you know, I verified his signature is an original signature, so it's not a generic letter. There was a part there where I said I invited him for coffee whenever he's in New York. You know, young person thinking big, and. Years later, 3 years later, you know, I'm actually sitting down with him. Him inviting me for dinner.
That's very interesting. They just called you?
They just picked me out of donations I made. Again, I made another small donation of $25.
Yeah.
But I didn't think anything of it. I just said, you know, let me support him.
Yeah. So what happened? They called you up?
They did, and they said, you know, we're calling from the Obama campaign, and we just wanted to ask you a few questions. This is not that you've been selected or anything, so, you know, like, okay, no problem. Yeah. First, you know, then they eventually called me back 2 days later, a day before my birthday, so it's a pretty nice birthday present, to tell me that I had been selected to have dinner with then candidate for president.
And then, so where was it? In Washington?
It was in Washington, yes.
So you had to pay to go down there?
No, actually, they paid for everything.
Oh, boy.
Hotel, transportation, everything.
What an exciting venture, huh?
It was.
So then you just started working in the campaign?
And then I took my commitment to another level, another notch.
Did you run as a delegate?
I did, but I wasn't here. I was in the campaign trail, so I had no time to campaign or call anybody up.
You needed to campaign a lot, to do it. So where did you go?
I went to states for Virginia, Rhode Island, Pennsylvania is where everything pretty much kicked off. After Pennsylvania, North Carolina, Raleigh, and then Puerto Rico, and then for the general I ended up in Florida.
Not bad. Did your mother support Obama?
She did. At first she was with Senator Clinton, or now Secretary of State Clinton, but she, you know, just caught up on my involvement with the campaign, and she was my #1 supporter in Philadelphia.
So did you learn things in the campaign, or did you already know them?
Some I know, but others I didn't. You know, I was never out there for any candidate. I have a lot of reservations on who to support and how to support folks. But at that level, it was a very organized campaign. And, you know, it was no drama, as we all know, campaign where it wasn't about me leading the group. It was about the group pretty much leading me. I was there to provide them with the resources of the campaign.
So how did you do that?
Well, I mean, for example, we organized the door knocks, knocking on doors, canvassing. But a lot of folks, you know, my experience local is that they tell you go knock on doors. But the person who's telling you that is not knocking on doors. On our end, we were knocking on doors. And usually somebody in the office would be a volunteer running the office. Because at the end of the day, we wanted them to see, you know, it's not about titles. It's not about whether I'm a staff member or not. You know, it's about getting the job done and getting Barack elected. And the way we do that is just by going out there and saying, you know what, I'm not going to send you to knock on doors or make calls. I'm going to do them with you. That's what I'm here to do for.
So it was the organizing part of it that was so interesting. But then when you knocked on doors, how did you talk to a voter?
It was actually, you know, as the campaign progressed, it made it easier, I think, because, you know, a lot of people were supporting then Senator Clinton, and it was between them two. So that was challenging. How do you convince a voter to switch from one candidate to another? For the general, it's a little bit easier. I was in Florida, which was not easy, convincing, you know, Republican.
Where were you in Florida?
In Hialeah.
Oh boy.
Which is
and it's a big Latino population?
Hialeah is actually has the highest concentration of Cuban Americans in the country.
And Cuban Americans are different from Dominicans?
Political, maybe. Definitely.
Yeah.
They're very, you know, hardcore Republicans.
Right. Did you meet any of the young Cubans? That's an interesting thing. They said that the younger Cuban Americans are willing to move on.
Yeah. No, and that's actually when we started, and you know, I always got to give credit to the young groups, young kids that came to our campaign first. Our first volunteers were not the adults. It was young kids from high school and college, which, you know, it's a story that I carry with me, and it's very touching. I keep in touch with them almost every day. Because with them came mom, came dad, came an uncle, came a brother, and that was the base of our office down there, the young folks, the college students, and eventually more people got involved. So they really came out for it.
When did you start actually going out?
As far as knocking on doors?
Yeah, I mean campaigning. Yeah.
Campaigning. Well, I mean, it was something that was pretty much, I picked up, you know, the first day, I could say, when I joined the campaign.
Yeah.
Where it's not, you know.
And when was that?
That was April.
April, so that was really a long time.
Yeah. And they made it clear. I mean, you know, and that, I learned that from one of the things I walked away with the campaign. It's not about what your title is. It's about making sure you get the job done.
Yeah. And it's also an interesting span of time for you to have been a volunteer, because in April, very few people took him really seriously, right?
Yeah.
Oh, he doesn't have a chance, blah, blah, blah. And it's a big hill, the Clinton machine, and they're all going to do it. Mm-hmm. And by the time you came around to October, it was a totally different story.
It was totally different.
So that's so interesting. Did you see the gradual evolution?
I did, slowly at some point. I thought it wasn't moving enough, and you know, you question yourself sometimes. You know, is this really going to happen?
Yeah.
And I think even to inauguration day, it was even hard to believe that it actually happened.
Yeah, it's exciting. Yeah. And the Latino population moved, didn't it, generally, in its support?
It did. And
Can
I was
you
working.
generalize what Latino population is? Because, you know, I'm Jewish, and every time they talk about the Jewish vote, I get upset, because there's a great difference between a lot of us.
I think you have to narrow it down to not so much the Latino, but you got to look at you know, the income levels and educational levels. And I mean, a Latino who's, you know, in the lower part of the economic ladder is not going to think of the same way, or probably even vote the same way as a Latino who's, you know, making hundreds of thousands of dollars, which in Florida that was usually the case. I mean, somebody who's, you know, the regular bus driver will be voting for Barack Obama, but, you know, the guy who actually owns the company is actually voting for the other candidate. So you can't generalize it in that point. You also got to look at it, you know, as far as the economic levels and the education.
Are there key issues of particular interest?
As far as the Latinos community, it is. I mean, you know, and when you look at immigration is one thing. Definitely education. When, you know, my experience is I had worked with out-of-school youth, and it's not, you know, our mentality is if they drop out of school is because of the problem kids, the trouble kids, and my experience was totally changed by working with them. Now I can, you know, speak before anybody and say that's not the case. Of course, there's always a few that, you know, they don't like school and they just drop out because they don't want to do with it. But there's the majority of them, that's not them. The majority of them want to go to school, but it's either the school system is failing them, you know, the teachers.
What does that mean?
Well, when I say the school system is failing them, they, you know, the teachers, and it's all a circle. The teachers are not getting paid enough, so they're struggling to actually provide the education that these kids need. You know, whether it's books, you know, simple things as pen and notebooks. And I remember working at a program for out-of-school youth that we founded. They didn't even have that. I mean, they didn't even have money to get a haircut, and because they didn't have that, they wouldn't even go to school. So, you know,
their clothes
and their clothes.
Yeah.
So it was a personal commitment on our end to say, you know what, go get a haircut. Here's the money.
Yeah.
But you know, not everybody can do that.
Is that also an economic thing? Children, kids from troubled families or poor families or something are more. Is that?
I think it comes down also to the economic, but I think there's an education component where you gotta, you know, teach the parents about the importance of a lot of parents who come in from other countries. Sometimes they don't know the value of the education here as much as back in the, and I can say because I'm from the Dominican Republic, where the education there is valued as well. But when you get here, you're thinking about jobs, making money, moving your family on, you know, forward, maybe going back home. But that's not the case. I mean, you come here and you really got education. It still has to be number one on that list.
It's an interesting question because there are so many different categories of people, and it does also cross the economic lines. And so did you come away thinking that people really could get together and get along with each other?
I did. And, you know, I think when the moment that we saw that was more the inauguration, where you saw, you know, you could see a white person with a black person hugging, crying both, and they probably don't even know each other.
Yeah.
They just happen to bump into each other. I mean, I remember when I was on an election night, I was crying, and I was hugging people. I had no idea who they were. I never met them in my life. But,
where were you?
Where were you? In Florida. I was in the office waiting for the results to come in.
That's very great. So what happens in the Bronx? That's not such an island of serenity, is it, politically?
It's not. It's not. By no means.
And so we usually think of Dominicans living in Washington Heights. Mm-hmm. Is there a large Dominican population in the Bronx?
Actually, according to the 2006 community service census, there are now more Dominicans in the Bronx.
Isn't that interesting?
They're in Washington Heights. But, you know, everybody's under the belief Washington Heights is Dominican. Well, the numbers do not reflect that anymore. It's actually now they're more in the Bronx.
And are they spread all over? Or are
they are, but there's the majority of them actually are on the northwest section of the Bronx.
That's yours.
That's my area, yeah.
Do you, as Dominican political people, do you get together with people from Washington Heights, for instance?
We actually don't.
Are they in factions there too? They are.
They are. Yeah. They are, and that's you know, that it's sad because that carries over as well, and it's hard to break, which is the reason why you know, I just said that we actually don't get involved in that area as well, because there's already a division there that carries over. So we try to break that division when they come over to the Bronx. You know, politically.
Are there any Dominican elected officials in the Bronx?
There actually was one more recent, Assemblyman Nelson Castro was the first, has become the first Dominican elected official in the Bronx.
So is he looked upon as the leader?
He's a good friend, I can tell you that. But you know, I think that he just, you know, politics. It's a lot of people say it has a lot to do with luck as well. So I could just say that, you know, he was in the right moment at the right time politically. And, you know, he was elected, so now I give him the benefit of the doubt and trust that he'll do good for the community. But, you know, he's got to take that role. And
the Bronx political organization, you don't really work with the hierarchy.
No. I'm very grassroots.
Yeah.
Now I'm getting a little bit more political, but I don't. I see a lot of people. I know. I see a lot of people that get away, elected officials that, you know, they get away from the grassroots component.
Definitely.
And they become
Some of them never were there.
Yeah, exactly.
So it's a lot of that kind of stuff. You know, talking about getting lucky, people now more and more talk about how lucky Obama was, that when he ran for the Senate, his opponent was knocked out in the primary by some marital problems or something, and then his Republican opponent was knocked out for other family problems, and so he really never faced the stiff competition.
Yeah, I think it was
a very interesting.
That was at the presidential campaign was when he really faced competition.
And now we have a new senator in New York who certainly was lucky.
Yeah.
Right now, what are you going to do about that? Because she has very strict. She has a very I don't know what you call it, strict. Feelings about immigration. She
does. I mean, I know that that, and also you know, I have issues on the gun control, because I know that she represented a district that's more pro-guns, but at the same time, you know, coming down here in New York is great, in New York City, to do the listening to her and whatnot. But, you know, the kids who are dying because of those guns are the Latinos and the African Americans. Right. So for you to come and stand before any group, or a Latino group, or in this case like the National Action Network, and, you know, come out as a great person, as a savior or whatnot, for me that's being a hypocrite, to be honest with you, because it's the kids who are dying are the African American Latinos kids because of those guns. That's one. And then with the immigration, you know, she's going to have a tough time, I think, explaining her stance on that to the Latino community.
What her stance is? What,
as far as building the border? I mean, she's obviously supportive, very firm for that. More restrictions, more border patrol. So
no amnesty.
No amnesty. Definitely no amnesty.
No working towards citizenship.
So that's a very aggressive position. I mean, she could change. I mean, you never know. She did say that, you know, she may have to change her position. let's hope that she does.
Right. When you were in other states, did you have business dealings with elected officials in those states?
We did.
Local elected officials?
Locals. One of the first things that we were encouraged to do is to reach out to them. And you know, we don't want the local elected officials when we go there to say, you know, they never called me.
Yeah.
Why haven't they included me?
Right.
I'm part of this. So we always did. Some came through, some we never saw or even heard of. You know, and we know who they are. Yeah. But, you know, we try. We always make sure that we document that we invited them, that we ask them to speak, get your people involved. You know your neighborhood better than we do, coming from, you know, we're from the outside and you live here, you represent this area. A lot of them were helpful. Others were, you know, never came through.
Did they resemble ones here?
I don't. Some of them.
I mean, and did you find that the party organization was as strong?
As strong as here? Not really. Over there, it was in other states. It was more, you know, each elected official put in whatever they wanted to. And again, it depends on which, you know, whether it was the primary. The primary was more discreet because there were a lot of support for Senator Clinton or Secretary of State Clinton now, and then there were some people that actually were on the fence. For the general, it was much easier. I mean, you know, the establishment came out for that.
It's when I refer to the New York City politics, it's really misleading because Manhattan has very little party structure, and the Bronx does have a party structure, right? Brooklyn, I don't know I guess it's now back into a party structure in Queens. So it changes, but somehow I've always looked upon politicians in other states with great envy because I think there's more mobility. There's more development of new talent, and I was hoping that the Obama campaign would be like that, the results of it. Are you connected with people in New York State who worked for the Obama?
I am, and we actually, we're in the middle and picking up from where, you know, President Obama has always encouraged everybody to stay involved and develop new leaders. I think there's always a fear of the current elected officials of being maybe taken out of office by them developing new leaders.
It's very threatening.
It is, but it shouldn't be that way. Right. I mean, you know, if you were there, for example, President Obama is there now. He's opening the doors to a Latino maybe in the future, or, you know, an Asian coming in. He's opening the doors, and that's his job, you know, to maintain that door open for other people to come in who were not supposed to make it. But we see that at the local level, we don't see that. We see more of, you know, half a door open and the other half.
So do you post your organization on the Obama site? What's it called now, the new site about
Change.gov?
Yeah.
Yes. We do. Now what we actually, we're going to launch, it's a program called Youth for Change, and this is a new program. And it's a program that will work with kids in urban cities across the country that will get them involved, not only civically, volunteering, cleaning up streets, tutoring, mentoring, but it will get them involved politically. And that becomes, you know, at the end of the day, we want them to become registered voters. We want them to come out and vote and get involved.
And when you say we, who is that?
As far as the organization that we have, Hands on New York, it's going to be a program from, but we already have the kids in Florida, Pennsylvania, we have kids in Chicago, and we have definitely here in New York City.
You know, Christmas time came around, Hanukkah and Christmas, and this year with the new president and the economy the way it is, and the general feeling of optimism and dread for looking back, I couldn't bring myself to buy any of my 11 grandchildren a present. And I kept thinking, the theme has to be generosity or something like that. We have to start very early and young about the care. And that's what your mother instilled in you, caring for other people and helping them instead of just what we're getting. And I think that's a great thing.
Definitely. No, I mean, you got to start early.
Yeah.
And that's something that with the program that we thought about, we say, well, you know, youth usually you could say 18 because you're looking at politically, but we're actually going as early as 14 because in 2012, the next presidential election, they'll be 18, so they could vote.
That's great. I was a poll watcher illegally when I was 16 or 15, I don't remember. And then somebody who came to vote came back. He wanted to take me out, make a date. We called it a date in those days. And when he found out how old I was, he was quite astonished and he left. But anyway, politics is a great thing, and it should be a great thing, and it should be considered a noble profession. But too often it gets mired in such mediocrity, or even worse, that it's too bad. But in the New York State organization, there are lots of wonderful people who came out of that Obama campaign. We have an organization on the West Side, then we've got a citywide organization and all over, so it's a very good way of connecting and doing things.
Yeah, it's very grassroots.
Yeah. And so you've already ascertained education, you think, or said that education is, you think, your most important issue, basically.
It is. Yeah.
What else?
Well, I mean, once you do that, then you got to look at jobs, and that applies to anybody from youth, to the adults. I mean, obviously the economy is struggling now. Hopefully, we're hopeful that it picks up very soon. But even, as it is, we're hearing more layoffs and more layoffs. So we don't know when it'll stop. We just hope it's soon. But you look at housing. I mean, rents, and that's why we mentioned earlier about Dominicans crossing over to the Bronx, but that's as a result of the rent increase. Soon, I'm sure the Bronx will experience that as well. Yeah. So that's, those three programs or issues are very, very...
Do you work now?
Now, I'm actually, besides Hands on New York, that's where that's where my job is. But I'm exploring other options and joining some local campaigns, and we'll see how that goes. And
then you're going to think about running for office someday.
We are. I mean, I'm having also conversations to see how eventually, not a lot of people know this, but, when we joined the campaign, we joined because of the commitment to change and hope. We had the right candidate, at least, that's those who were supporting him believed. And we were also offered the opportunity to join the administration sooner rather than later. So that's also an opportunity that will come up soon, and we'll see where
I hope you stick with it and that the future gets bright. Thank you very much, Haile.
Thank you, Ronnie. Thank you.
If there are any people you'd like to hear and topics you'd like us to explore, please let me know. You can write to me at CUNY TV, 365 Fifth Avenue, New York, New York, 10016, or you can go to the website at cuny.tv and click on Contact Us. I look forward to hearing from you.